Hey, what's going on, good people? Welcome to Russ Can Fly, the anatomy of a challenging takeoff. Let's go. Okay, so I wanted to revisit this takeoff because I think there is some lessons learned here, and I'm definitely interested in hearing from my pilot community. What do you think happened here? What could I have done better? One of the things I do want to do amongst the aviation YouTube community is to provide this marketplace of ideas where, iron sharpens irons, where we can learn from one another, where we can get, review and critique, constructive criticism from one another to make us all better. And so that's why I put my videos out, and this is why I'm revisiting this particular video, because I do think I have some lessons that I can learn from this particular takeoff, and I trust many of you in my aviation community to kind of help me out to figure out, okay, what's a better thing to have done here? What are some of the other things I should have considered? Now, I do know that there are these things where, that video, I talked about this video, this takeoff scaring me, and that's the thumbnail. And I really do want to make sure that I stay away from like this clickbait type of aspect of this whole YouTube aviation experience and journey. But having said that, I am going to tell the truth. And although that thumbnail for that particular video may have seemed like a little bit of clickbait, it wasn't. It was true that takeoff really did scare me. And now that I've had a chance to reflect on it, I wanted to basically go back and revisit that particular takeoff and dissect it a little bit so that I can learn, that maybe somebody else can learn, and because I think there's some things to unpack from that particular takeoff. So let's do this. Let's go back to the actual takeoff. I'm going to play it in its entirety, and I want you to just kind of listen and watch all of the things that happened during that takeoff. Now, here's the thing. I can't remember the exact weather report, but the wind was variable. I had I believe it was a right quartering headwind that was variable to a direct crosswind, and then in some instances even varied enough where it was kind of flirting with a little bit of a tailwind. I was cognizant of that report and definitely was making sure that I paid attention to what the windsock was doing. That was my guide, given the fact that this wind was variable. And I'm oftentimes cognizant of that issue because even here at Wings, sometimes the wind will be variable, but definitely at Doylestown, sometimes that wind will shift from runway 05 to runway 26. And actually, you'll see a video where I actually kind of get caught up in that, but I digress. But that's what was going on with the weather, and that was the first time that I had landed at Claremont, and you've seen that video some weeks ago as well. And so Claremont is the airport that I'm taking off from, and so you can remember there's this trees, displaced threshold, and I did do a short field takeoff. So without further ado, I'm going to show the takeoff in its entirety, and let's come back on the other side and talk about it. Okay, run-up's complete, so let's go ahead and go over here. So before I go on, again, 10 degrees of flaps are in. Mixture is full rich. Trim is set for takeoff. Taxi landing light is going to come on. Carb heat is cold, and the fuel tank is on. Definitely have to make sure everything is in order. Flaps, mixture, carb heat, and trim. All right, so everything is good. Don't hear anybody calling on final, and nobody's on the field. Claremont traffic, Cessna 94006, departing runway 3 out to the northeast. Claremont. Okay, normally I play music, not going to do that. I want you to hear this takeoff. Man, scary. All right, so again, I got my flaps 10. Mixture is full rich. Carb heat is cold. Taxi landing light is on. Trim is set for takeoff. And as you can see, I am skirting this. I want every inch of this runway. Every inch. I don't want to give up any of it. And in fact, if the lights weren't there, I'd go into the grass. And if you look forward there, that's what I'm looking at. See that uphill climb we got there? And windsock is good. A little bit of a cross correction there. All right, I see 1-3. 1-3. All right, let's close this window. All right, I got the wind where I want it to be. All right, engine's gonna come full power. Suction, oil temp, oil pressure, all look good. All right, let's go. Heels to the floor. All right, airspeed is alive. And I'm gonna be looking to come off pretty soon. Simmer up. Simmer up. And clear my traffic. Cessna 904006. Right crosswind turn out to the northeast. Last call, Claremont. So I think what happened was the wind shifted drastically when I got over the trees. It was somehow blocking, you know, because you can see those trees were off to my left on my takeoff. Once I got above the tree line, the winds were doing something completely different, and it was more akin to a tailwind than a headwind. Man, listen. I was the most scared I've ever been on a takeoff, I'm not gonna lie to you. Because I kept hearing the stall horn, and and I kept seeing trees, and yeah, that was pretty scary. Okay, so one of the things that you definitely notice is that as I'm coming up over the trees, you are constantly hearing the stall horn. Now, here's what I'm going to say to all of my student pilot peeps. I hated power on stalls. Couldn't stand them. And that one of the things that had to do with the fact that all of my pilot training for my PPL was done in a Cessna 172. And for whatever reason, this particular 172, anytime I did a power on stall, I would go full power, bring the nose up, it would stall, and for some reason, that right wing always wanted to drop for some reason. And I'm not exactly sure like why that was, but it just always freaked me the hell out. And so I hated power on stalls. And in fact, I couldn't even think of like, why you even have to do these damn things? Like, what's the whole point of a power on stall? Well, for all of the student pilot peoples, that's what the whole point is. Stall recovery and training, and being automatic in terms of what you do once you start to stall. Because what you see on this particular takeoff is as I am climbing up, I'm pulling back, getting a nose up attitude, the stall horn is coming, and I'm immediately lowering the nose because I know one of the things I don't want to do is continue into that stall, get into a stall and possibly aggravated stall, and then spin and into the trees, into the ground. Not a good day. So I instinctually knew that I needed to lower that nose, and that's why I kept hearing the stall horn. But the question is, why did I get into that kind of airspeed situation where I was just flirting with the stall, it seemed like every 5 seconds, and being so close to the trees? Here's my take. So I definitely was prepared and configured correctly for a short field takeoff. I had 10 degrees of flaps and all of that kind of stuff. Now, I believe little Sammy, I'm usually looking at the cars, but I believe rotation speed in Sammy is 55 knots. With the flaps, he comes up pretty quick. I think one of the things that I could have done, because I knew I did have a 50-foot obstacle, trees, at the end of that runway, and they came up pretty quick. So one of the things that I should have been mindful of was maybe getting a little bit more airspeed before I pitched up into VX, because I didn't have enough airspeed once I went over those trees and the air shifted, and we'll get to that as another point. So I think one of the things that would have been good for me to have done is to almost like a soft field takeoff, where you bring the nose wheel up, you almost do like a wheelie, you pop off the runway, you lower the nose to get some airspeed, and then once you've got some good airspeed, then pitch the nose, up to VX and then climb out there. I think with a little bit more airspeed, once I got over those trees and whatever was happening with the wind, I think I would have been in better shape, because I got to tell you, 2 things were happening once I got over those trees. My airspeed was deteriorating, thus the stall horn, and also my altitude was not climbing. I was climbing out at an anemic maybe 50 to 100 feet per minute, which made me very nervous. So I think that was one of the things that I definitely could have done better. And, given the fact that the winds were variable, it was a short field takeoff, I should have definitely got a little bit more airspeed, while I was in ground effect, before I basically, pulled the nose up and really tried to get them off. And I think I would have had plenty of time to get enough airspeed, get to VX, climb out at VX, and be fine with the tree. So that's something that I think should have been on my radar screen, rather than, I think, just climbing out at VY and having issues, and once I got up above the tree line. But that brings me to my next point, this tree line. So one of the things that I probably should have remembered is when I landed, the winds were doing crazy stuff over those trees. And then as soon as I got below the tree line, the winds were doing something completely different there too. And so I definitely should have figured out that, there's gonna probably be something going on. Like once I, that whole tree line to the left of me was probably blocking some wind or doing something interesting with the wind. And so once I got up above that, now I am subject to winds and stuff that's going on. So I should have definitely been more cognizant there. But the other thing is, remember, the forecast, I believe, was for the winds to be variable. And so since I knew that headwind was coming from the right, what I probably could have done to get a little bit more lift was do a more quicker crosswind turn to the right to get more into the wind so that I would get more lift. I basically just stayed straight out, and in fact, I think made the error of doing this, and I'll tell you why I did it. As I was coming up over the trees, I don't know if you remember, if you see the video, you see me look to the left. Well, the reason why I did that is because I thought if I'm not gonna make it, there was a clear patch in this tree line. Wasn't a whole lot, but there was a big clearing in the, to the left. And so I figured if I'm not gonna make it and I have to put this thing down, I don't wanna go into the trees. I'd rather go to the left and, go over there and try to put it down and walk away from a landing that was going to be less than optimal, but, hopefully not deadly. But the problem with doing that is, since this wind is coming from the right, going to the left and looking to the left actually makes it even less of a going into the wind and giving me a little bit more of a wind that way. I don't know. So I didn't go completely to the left. I didn't make a left crosswind, but certainly what was going on is as I was coming up, I was going more straight. I was keeping that same takeoff profile and definitely looking like I was going to be starting to cheat to the left a little bit, which was not optimal. So I definitely should have put myself in a situation where I was going more to the right. That would have put me more into the wind, and I think that just would have helped with lift and all of that kind of stuff. So not exactly sure if that would have been a good factor. I don't know, but it's definitely something that I should have been thinking about in terms of, okay, you understand what's happening with these winds. You heard the wind forecast. You know what you experienced on the way into the airport. So be mindful of what possibly could be happening with this swirl and coming up over the trees and that kind of thing. And so what say you? Now that you've kind of heard me talk about it a little bit more, I had a chance to digest and think about it. You got a chance to watch the takeoff. I welcome any comments or critique. Certainly, that takeoff was the scariest takeoff I've had to date. And I've had some pretty sporty takeoffs, but this one really scared me. I really believed that one gust, just because of the fact that my airspeed was deteriorating. You heard the stall horn was very active in terms of, definitely flirting with stalling. There was this real potential. Like when I really thought about it after I landed, after I kind of debriefed in my own head, that there was a real potential that, thank the Lord, I kept that ball centered and coordinated. I think it's always a game of inches, right? And I think one little uncoordination or gust, or heaven forbid, like the gust like really turned into a full tailwind, I would have been in those trees. I am convinced of that. Now I will say this: you hear me talk about the good Lord keeping his hand underneath that airplane. I really believe that to be true, because I am convinced that I was right on the precipice of that takeoff ending really, really badly. And I want to make sure that something like that doesn't happen again. Now, of course, you can't plan for every eventuality, but the engine was producing the right amount of power. The plane was behaving, correctly. If anything would have happened, it would have been pilot error. And I'm just putting myself out there to be better, to make sure that I am safe. And so, yes, I do know that some of us feel this pressure because we want to grow and compete with some of the bigger channels. Yes, we may do things on our thumbnails to try to garner attention. And yes, I think there's been some aviation YouTubers, unfortunately, that have found themselves really kind of focusing on the YouTube thing versus the flying. Not so with me. I'm using my YouTube channel as a tool to introduce people to aviation that may have not thought about it before. I'm also using it to inspire folks that, like me, when I was out here and I was, doing my journey, there'd be times where I would just be so frustrated about what was happening. And sometimes it was just watching somebody else's video that would convince me that I need to keep going. But the other thing that I'm using this journey for is for instruction, so that I can be a better aviator in this YouTube space. And so that is important to me. So that's why I'm putting this back out, because what I'm looking for is any additional instruction or what people think should have happened here. All right. So that's it. I thank you guys for taking the time to watch this, and I thank you all for taking the opportunity to provide any comments, any instruction. What do you think happened here? What could I do better? Because again, I'm not just trying to be salacious, and I'm not just trying to get the views. I really am trying to have a situation where this YouTube journey is helping me become a better pilot. And then if there's other students who see this video and they read the comments, that it also helps them as well, so that they don't make the same mistakes that I'm making. All right. So at any rate, thank you so much. I thank you for all of the support. It means so much to me. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video and comment. Don't forget to click the thumbs up button. I really appreciate the support. All right, Russ Kid, Russ Can Fly, I'm out. Peace.